The summer heat pressed down on everything like a heavy blanket. In the old marketplace, where vendors shouted prices and customers bargained over every coin, a young boy named Tariq wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. He was 12 years old, though sometimes people thought he was younger because he was small for his age. His clothes were clean but worn thin from too many washes, and his sandals had been repaired so many times with wire and string that they barely looked like shoes anymore. Tariq worked at his uncle's fruit stand every day after school. Well, on the days he could go to school, some days his uncle needed him more than the classroom did, or at least that's what his uncle said. The stand wasn't much to look at. Just a wooden cart with wobbly wheels and a faded umbrella that provided more hope than actual shade. But it was their livelihood, and Tariq took his job seriously. He arranged the mangoes carefully, making sure the ripest ones caught the eye while hiding the slightly bruised ones underneath. His uncle had taught him all the tricks: how to stack oranges so they looked abundant even when they weren't, how to smile at customers even when his feet ached from standing all day, how to spot trouble before it arrived. And trouble, Tariq sensed, was about to arrive. A sleek car pulled up near the market, looking completely out of place among the motorcycles and rickshaws. The kind of car that had air conditioning and leather seats. The kind Tariq had only seen in passing, never up close. A woman stepped out, her clothes crisp and expensive, her sunglasses probably worth more than everything on their fruit stand combined. But it wasn't the woman who caught Tariq's attention. It was the little boy who climbed out after her, already whining about something. The boy looked about 6 years old, dressed in brand new clothes that had probably never seen a speck of dust until today. His shoes were spotless, bright white, the kind that cost as much as Tariq's family spent on food in a month. The woman, who Tariq later learned was called Mrs. Karim, walked through the market with quick, tired steps. She had that look about her that Tariq recognized, the look of someone who had 100 things to do and not enough time to do them. Her son, whose name was Amir, trailed behind her, touching everything, picking up fruits and putting them down in the wrong places, making vendors grumble under their breath. Tariq's uncle greeted Mrs. Karim with his best smile when she approached their stand. She wanted pomegranates, she said, but only if they were fresh. She picked up one, examined it like a detective looking for clues, and began the usual dance of bargaining. His uncle quoted a price. She offered half. He acted offended. She raised her offer slightly. Back and forth they went. While the adults negotiated, Amir's attention wandered to the toy shop across the narrow lane. Tariq watched the boy's eyes go wide, fixed on something in the shop window. It was one of those expensive electronic toys, the kind that lit up and made sounds and probably broke within a week, but to a 6-year-old it might as well have been made of magic. Amir tugged on his mother's sleeve. Once. Twice. 3 times. "Mama, I want that toy," he said, pointing. Mrs. Karim barely glanced up from her inspection of the pomegranates. "Not now, Amir." "But Mama, I want it." "I said not now." Her voice had that edge to it, the warning tone that usually made children pause. But Amir didn't pause. "Please, Mama, please, please, please." "Amir, we talked about this. You just got a new toy last week." "But I want this one." Tariq continued arranging the fruit, but he was paying attention now. He'd seen this scene play out before, just with different actors. His younger sister Zara did the same thing sometimes at home, though she usually wanted food, not toys. Mrs. Karim's jaw tightened. She was trying to focus on the pomegranates, trying to finish her shopping, but her son's voice was getting louder. Other customers were starting to look. In a marketplace where everyone knew everyone's business, she was becoming the center of attention, and not in a good way. "Amir, the answer is no. We're going home after this." That's when the whining turned into crying. Not real crying yet, but that fake crying children do when they're testing boundaries. The kind that could turn real at any moment. "It's not fair." Amir's voice climbed higher. "You never get me anything." Tariq almost laughed at that. This boy, whose shoes cost a month's worth of groceries, was claiming he never got anything. But he kept his face neutral. It wasn't his place to judge. Mrs. Karim's face flushed red. She paid for the pomegranates quickly, probably more than she wanted to, just to end the transaction. She grabbed Amir's hand and tried to lead him away, but the boy had other ideas. He planted his feet. He pulled his hand free, and then, right there in the middle of the dusty marketplace, he threw himself on the ground. The fake crying became real, explosive screaming. Amir kicked his legs, pounded his fists against the dirt, and wailed like the world was ending. His brand new clothes got covered in dust within seconds. His perfect white shoes scuffed against the ground. Everyone stopped what they were doing. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Vendors paused in their selling. Customers turned to stare. Even the stray dogs that wandered the market seemed to watch with interest. Mrs. Karim stood frozen for a moment, her shopping bags hanging from her arms, her face cycling through emotions. Embarrassment, anger, exhaustion, helplessness. Tariq had never seen an adult look so lost. "Amir, get up right now," she said through gritted teeth, trying to keep her voice low but firm. Amir screamed louder. She tried to pull him up by his arm. He went limp, making himself heavy, making it impossible. "Stop this nonsense immediately." The boy didn't stop. If anything, the attention seemed to fuel him. His screams echoed off the shop walls, mixing with the usual market sounds, creating a symphony of chaos. An old woman passing by shook her head and muttered something about spoiled children and weak parents. A shopkeeper from 2 stalls down called out something meant to be helpful, but came across as critical. Mrs. Karim's face grew redder with each comment. Each stare, each whisper. She crouched down, trying to reason with her son, but her voice had lost its authority. It shook now with frustration or tears or both. "Please, Amir, please just get up. We'll talk about this at home." But Amir was past hearing. He was trapped in his own storm of emotions, unable to find his way out even if he wanted to. Tariq watched all of this from behind the fruit stand. He felt something tighten in his chest. Not anger at the disruption or judgment at the parenting. Something else. Something that felt like recognition. He'd been there before. Not throwing a tantrum in a market, but feeling so overwhelmed by wanting something, by the unfairness of life, that everything inside wanted to explode. The difference was, when he felt that way, there was no toy to want. There was usually just hunger or tiredness or the weight of too many responsibilities for a 12-year-old. But the feeling, he realized, was probably the same. Just wearing different clothes. His uncle was serving another customer, not paying attention to the scene. The other vendors had turned back to their work, leaving Mrs. Karim alone in her struggle. And something in Tariq decided in that moment that maybe he could help. He didn't know how yet. He just knew he had to try. Tariq glanced at his uncle, who was busy weighing vegetables for a customer. He wouldn't notice if Tariq stepped away for a moment. The fruit stand could survive without him for a few minutes. He reached for the small clay pitcher they kept under the cart. It held water that was supposed to stay cool in the shade, though on days like this nothing stayed cool for long. He poured some into a dented metal cup, the kind that had been dropped so many times it no longer sat flat on any surface. The screaming continued. Amir was now on his back, arching it, his face red and streaked with tears and dust. Mrs. Karim had given up trying to pull him up and was just standing there, her shopping bags at her feet, looking like she might cry herself. Tariq walked slowly toward them, not directly at them, which might have felt threatening or intrusive. Just near them, close enough to be in their space but not demanding their attention. He found a spot a few feet away from where Amir was thrashing and carefully set the cup of water down on a low wall. Then he did something that probably looked strange to anyone watching. He started picking up small pebbles from the ground. The marketplace was full of them. Smooth ones worn down by thousands of footsteps, rough ones that had broken off from bigger rocks. Different colors, different sizes. Most people walked right over them without a second thought. But Tariq had always noticed them. When you spent your whole life looking down, you saw things other people missed. He chose his pebbles carefully, 5 of them, all about the same size, all smooth enough to feel good in his hand. Then he knelt down on the dusty ground, ignoring the way the dirt pressed into his already dirty knees, and began to arrange them. He placed one in the center, then 4 around it, making a simple flower pattern. His movements were slow, deliberate, almost ceremonial, like this was the most important thing in the world, arranging these 5 ordinary pebbles. The screaming didn't stop right away. Amir was too lost in his own storm to notice much of anything. Mrs. Karim, though, she noticed. Tariq could feel her eyes on him, confused, probably wondering what this poor boy was doing, whether he was mocking her or trying to help or simply strange. He didn't look up at her. He just kept working on his pattern, and as he worked, he started humming. It was a tune his grandmother used to sing. She'd been gone for 3 years now, but the melody stayed with him, especially on hard days. It wasn't really a song with words, just a meandering tune that rose and fell like breathing. She used to hum it when she cooked, when she mended clothes, when she sat on their doorstep in the evening, watching the sun go down. His grandmother had taught him a lot of things. How to find the good in bad situations, how to make something from nothing, how to be still when everything around you was chaos. When the world is shouting, she used to tell him, you don't have to shout back. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is whisper. So Tariq whispered, in his own way, with pebbles and humming and patience. He rearranged the stones, making a different pattern now. A star shape. Then he added more pebbles, extending the design outward. A line here, a curve there. Nothing fancy. Nothing that would impress an artist. Just simple shapes that appeared one small stone at a time. The first sign that something was changing came as a hiccup in Amir's crying. Just a brief pause, so short that Mrs. Karim might not have even noticed it. But Tariq did. He kept going, adding another pebble, then another. His humming continued, steady as a heartbeat. Another hiccup. This time longer. The screaming became sobbing, which was still loud but different. Less like a siren, more like actual sadness. Tariq shifted his position slightly, making his pattern bigger, working his way across a flat section of ground. He found a white pebble, which was rare, and placed it carefully in his design. Then a black one. Then several gray ones in a row. From the corner of his eye, he could see Amir starting to pay attention. The boy was still crying, but his eyes had opened. He was watching, even though his body was still stuck in tantrum mode. Mrs. Karim noticed, too. She stood very still, like someone watching a wild animal who didn't want to spook it. Her mouth was slightly open, her earlier frustration replaced by something like wonder. Tariq reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of chalk. He'd found it on the street a week ago, probably dropped by a schoolchild. It was only a stub, barely long enough to hold, but he'd kept it anyway. Might be useful someday, he'd thought. Someday turned out to be today. He began drawing on the ground next to his pebble pattern. Simple shapes at first, a circle, a triangle. Then he connected them, making them into something. A sun, a house, a tree. His grandmother had taught him this too. When his little sister Zara got upset, when she cried because there wasn't enough food or because the other children had things she didn't, their grandmother would draw pictures in the dirt outside their house. She'd make Zara help her, asking her what color the sun should be, whether the tree should be big or small. Tears are like rain, his grandmother would say. They fall when they need to fall. But rain always stops eventually, and when it does, things grow. Amir's crying had reduced to sniffles now. He was sitting up, though he probably didn't remember deciding to do that. His face was a mess of tears and snot and dirt, but his eyes were clear. They were fixed on Tariq's hands, watching the chalk move, watching the pebbles appear in new places. Tariq still hadn't looked directly at him. He didn't speak to him or acknowledge him. He just kept creating, kept humming softly, kept being a calm presence in the middle of all that leftover chaos. He drew a bird next to the tree. Not a good bird. Tariq was no artist. It looked more like a lumpy circle with a triangle stuck to it, but it was recognizable enough, and that's when he heard it. A small voice thick with leftover tears. "What are you making?" Tariq paused his humming but didn't stop working. He added another pebble to his design before answering, and when he did, his voice was as soft as his grandmother's had been. "I'm not sure yet," he said honestly. "Sometimes I just start making things and see where they go." Amir wiped his nose with the back of his hand, leaving a streak across his cheek. He scooted a little closer, no longer caring about his dirty clothes or his ruined shoes. "Why?" the boy asked. Tariq thought about that. Why did he do this? He'd never really put it into words before. "Sometimes my head gets too loud," he said finally, choosing each word carefully, like there's too many thoughts all trying to talk at once. Making patterns makes it quiet again. He glanced up then, just for a second, meeting Amir's eyes. The boy looked at him with that open, honest expression children have before they learn to hide things. "My head feels loud too," Amir whispered. Tariq nodded. He understood. Maybe their reasons for loudness were different. Amir probably had different problems than worrying about where the next meal would come from, or whether his shoes would last another month. But loud was loud whether you were rich or poor. "It's okay," Tariq said. "Everyone's head gets loud sometimes." He picked up a smooth brown pebble and held it out to Amir. not pushing it at him, not making demands. Just offering, "Want to help?" Amir looked at the pebble, then at his mother who gave the tiniest nod, her eyes wet, then back at Tariq. Slowly, carefully, he reached out and took the stone. Mrs. Karim let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Around them, the marketplace had returned to its normal rhythm. People had stopped staring and gone back to their business. The world kept turning, but in this small space, on this patch of dusty ground, something was shifting. Amir held the pebble in his small hand, looking at it like it was precious, like it mattered. "Where should I put it?" he asked. Tariq pointed to a gap in his design. "Right there. It needs something round." Amir leaned forward and placed the pebble carefully, his tongue sticking out slightly in concentration. When it was settled, he looked up at Tariq for approval. "Perfect," Tariq said, and he meant it. For the next several minutes, the two boys worked side by side in companionable silence. Well, mostly silence. Amir would occasionally ask where a stone should go, and Tariq would suggest a spot, always letting the younger boy make the final decision. The pattern on the ground grew larger. What had started as a simple flower had become something more complex, a garden maybe, or a map to somewhere imaginary. Neither boy seemed to care what it was supposed to be. The act of creating it was enough. Mrs. Karim watched from where she stood, still holding her shopping bags. She'd moved closer now, carefully, like someone approaching a bubble they didn't want to burst. Tariq could feel her presence, but she wasn't interfering. She seemed to understand somehow that this moment belonged to the children. A bead of sweat rolled down Tariq's temple. The sun was relentless and the ground radiated heat like an oven. But he didn't mind. He'd worked in worse conditions. At least here, in this moment, he wasn't arranging fruit or calling out prices or running errands. He was just being present with another human who needed someone to be present with them. "I got really mad," Amir said suddenly, breaking the peaceful quiet. His voice was small, uncertain. Tariq added another pebble to the design before responding. "I could tell. I wanted that toy so much." Amir looked back toward the shop across the lane, where the electronic toy still sat in the window, blinking and colorful. "Wanting things is normal," Tariq said. He picked up the chalk stub and drew a wavy line like a river through part of their pattern. "But I already have lots of toys at home," Amir continued, his words tumbling out now like he needed to confess something. "I have a whole room full of them. Mama says I have more toys than some stores." Tariq smiled slightly but didn't comment. He couldn't imagine having more toys than a store. He couldn't imagine having a whole room just for toys. He shared a room with his two siblings, and their possessions fit in a single wooden trunk. "So why did I want another one so badly?" Amir asked, looking at Tariq like he might have the answer to this mystery. Tariq sat back on his heels, thinking about how to explain something he was still figuring out himself. "I think sometimes," he said slowly, "we want things not because we need them, but because wanting them fills up a feeling we don't like." Amir's forehead wrinkled in confusion. "What feeling?" "Different ones for different people," Tariq said. He picked up a handful of dust and let it run through his fingers, watching it scatter in the slight breeze. "Sometimes I want things because I'm hungry. Sometimes because I'm tired. Sometimes because I feel small and forgotten. And wanting something big makes me feel bigger." He looked at Amir directly now. "What feeling were you trying to fill up?" The younger boy thought about this, really thought about it. His face went through several expressions, like he was trying on different answers to see which one fit. "I think," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper, "I wanted Mama to stop being busy and pay attention to me." Tariq nodded slowly. That made sense. Even from his brief observation, he'd seen how distracted Mrs. Karim was, how her mind seemed to be in 10 places at once. "Did getting mad work?" Tariq asked gently. "Did it make her stop being busy?" Amir looked up at his mother, who was watching them with tears quietly sliding down her cheeks. Then he looked back down at the ground. "I guess it did," he said, "but not in a good way. She was paying attention, but she was upset. And I felt bad inside." "Yeah," Tariq said. "That's the tricky part about big feelings. They get attention, but not always the kind we actually want." He added a few more pebbles to their design, creating a border around the edge. Amir helped, seeming to understand the pattern Tariq was making. "Do you get mad like that?" Amir asked. Tariq considered lying, making himself sound wiser or better than he was. But what good would that do? Sometimes, he admitted. Not about toys, usually. But yeah, I get mad. Sometimes I get so angry that everything inside me feels like it's burning. What do you do when that happens? Different things. Sometimes I come out here and arrange fruit until the anger gets tired of being angry. Sometimes I walk really fast until my legs hurt more than my heart. Sometimes I talk to my little sister Zara, and she makes me laugh even when I don't want to. He paused, picking up the cup of water he'd brought earlier. It was warm now, but he took a sip anyway and then offered it to Amir. The boy hesitated for only a moment before accepting it and drinking. But the thing my grandmother taught me, Tariq continued, the thing that helps the most is this. He gestured to the pattern they'd made on the ground. Making something. Creating instead of destroying. When I feel like breaking things, I make things instead. But these are just rocks, Amir said, not rudely, just honestly. They're just rocks, Tariq agreed. But look at what we did with them. 10 minutes ago, they were nothing. Scattered on the ground where people stepped on them. Now they're something. A pattern. A picture. A moment we shared. That's not nothing. Amir stared at the design they'd created together. Tariq could almost see the wheels turning in the boy's head, processing this idea. My grandmother used to tell me a story, Tariq said, settling into a more comfortable sitting position, about a man who was so angry at the world that he wanted to burn everything down. He had good reasons to be angry. Life had been cruel to him. So one day he gathered wood and prepared a huge fire, planning to set his whole village ablaze. Amir's eyes went wide. That's scary. It is, Tariq agreed. But before he could light the fire, his young daughter came to him. She didn't know about his plan. She just wanted to show him something she'd made. A doll crafted from scraps of cloth and twine. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't worth any money. But she'd made it with her own hands, and she was so proud. Tariq paused, remembering how his grandmother's voice would change at this part of the story, becoming soft and gentle. The man looked at his daughter's creation, and something inside him shifted. He realized that he had a choice. He could use his hands to destroy, or he could use them to create. Both were powerful. Both would change things. But only one would leave something good behind. What did he do? Amir asked, completely absorbed in the story. He taught his daughter how to make better dolls, and he started creating things too. Not dolls, but other things. He built furniture. He repaired broken tools. He used his anger, which was still there, but he turned it into energy for building instead of destroying. Amir was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I destroyed the nice day Mama was having. It wasn't a question, just a realization. Tariq saw Mrs. Karim's hand go to her mouth, fresh tears coming. Maybe, Tariq said carefully, but you're not done with the day yet. You can still build something good out of what's left. How? Tariq thought about this. How did you fix something after you'd broken it? He was still learning that himself. I think, he said slowly, it starts with being honest, not making excuses, but just saying what's true. And then asking what you can do to make it better. Amir looked scared for a moment. Being honest felt risky, Tariq knew. It meant being vulnerable, admitting you were wrong. That was hard for anyone, but especially for a 6-year-old who was used to getting his way. But then Amir stood up. His clothes were filthy, his face was a mess, and his expensive shoes were probably ruined. He walked over to his mother, who immediately knelt down to his level. Mama, he said, his voice shaking slightly. I'm sorry I screamed and kicked and made you sad. I wanted you to pay attention to me, but I did it in a bad way. Mrs. Karim pulled him into a tight hug, not caring about the dirt transferring to her clean clothes. Oh, sweetheart, she whispered into his hair. I'm sorry too. I've been so busy that I forgot to really see you. Tariq looked away, giving them privacy for their moment. He started gathering up some of the pebbles, preparing to restore the ground to how it was before. Wait, Amir said, pulling away from his mother. Can we keep it? The pattern? Tariq smiled. It won't last. The first person who walks here will scatter it. But it was here, Amir insisted. We made it. That matters, right? Yeah, Tariq said softly. That matters. Mrs. Karim pulled out her phone and took a picture of the pattern. Then she took another of the 2 boys sitting beside their creation. Then one more of just Tariq, so we remember, she explained. Tariq started to stand up, brushing the dust from his knees. His uncle would be wondering where he'd gone. There was work to do, fruit to sell, customers to serve. This small detour into kindness had been nice, but real life was calling him back. Wait, Mrs. Karim said, her voice catching slightly. She was still kneeling beside Amir, one arm around her son, but her eyes were fixed on Tariq. Please, just wait a moment. Tariq paused, uncertain. He wasn't used to adults asking him to wait, especially not wealthy ones who drove expensive cars. Mrs. Karim seemed to be struggling with what to say. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. What you just did, she began, gesturing vaguely at the ground, at Amir. At the space where chaos had been transformed into calm. I've never seen anything like that. Tariq shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention. I didn't really do anything. Just sat with him. No, she said firmly, shaking her head. It was more than that. I've read books about parenting. Expensive books written by experts with degrees. I've taken classes. I've watched videos online, and none of them, not a single one, showed me what you just showed my son. She reached into her purse and Tariq tensed slightly. He knew what was coming. Money. People with money always thought money fixed things. And while he needed money, desperately, there was something about this moment that felt like it would be cheapened by reducing it to a transaction. Mrs. Karim pulled out several bills, more than Tariq made in a week at the fruit stand. She held them out to him. Please, she said. Take this. You helped us more than you know. Tariq looked at the money. He thought about his sister Zara's worn-out school shoes, about the leak in their roof that got worse every time it rained, about the medical bills from when his mother got sick last month. That money could help with all of those things. But he also thought about his grandmother's voice. When you help someone, do it because your heart tells you to, not because your pocket wants you to. I can't, he said quietly. Mrs. Karim looked surprised. Why not? You work hard. You deserve it. I do work hard, Tariq agreed, and I do need money. But I didn't help Amir to get paid. I helped him because he needed help. If I take money now, it changes what happened. It makes it feel like a job instead of just being human. Amir was watching this exchange with wide eyes, learning something about the world that couldn't be taught from books. Mrs. Karim slowly lowered her hand, but she didn't put the money away. You're 12 years old, she said, and there was something like wonder in her voice. And you understand things that I'm still learning at 35. Tariq glanced back at his uncle's fruit stand. His uncle had noticed his absence now and was looking around for him. I should go back to work, Tariq said. Wait, Mrs. Karim said again. She was thinking. He could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. What if instead of payment I asked you for something? A favor? Tariq waited, curious despite himself. Amir struggles with his feelings, she said, choosing her words carefully. He's a good boy, but when things don't go his way, he gets overwhelmed. And I realize now that I don't always know how to help him. I get frustrated, I get embarrassed, and that makes everything worse. She took a breath. Could you teach him? Not as a job, just as a friend? Teach him what your grandmother taught you. About staying calm. About making things instead of destroying things. About using his hands and his mind when his emotions get too big. Tariq thought about this. It wasn't really a favor she was asking for. It was more like she was giving him permission to be part of something. I'm here most days, he said slowly. At the fruit stand. If you bring him by, I can show him things. When I have time between customers. Amir's face lit up. Really? Can we, Mama? Can we come back? Mrs. Karim smiled, and it was the first real smile Tariq had seen from her. Yes, sweetheart. We can come back. She stood up, gathering her shopping bags. Then she paused and looked at Tariq again. What's your name? I should know the name of my son's teacher. Tariq. I'm Nadia, she said. And this is Amir, but you already know that. She reached out her hand and Tariq shook it. Her hand was soft, uncalloused, so different from his own rough palms. But the handshake was firm, respectful. Equal to equal. We'll come back tomorrow, Nadia said. If that's okay. Tariq nodded. Tomorrow's fine. As they walked back to their car, Amir kept turning around to wave at Tariq. Each time, Tariq waved back. When they finally drove away, the marketplace seemed quieter somehow, even though it was just as noisy as before. Tariq returned to the fruit stand to find his uncle watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Who were they? His uncle asked. Just a lady and her son. She offered you money. I saw. Why didn't you take it? Tariq picked up a cloth and began wiping down the already clean mangoes, keeping his hands busy. It didn't feel right. His uncle was quiet for a moment. Then he said something Tariq didn't expect. Your grandmother would be proud of you. Tariq's throat tightened. He blinked rapidly, focusing hard on the mangoes. You think so? I know so. She always said you had her heart. His uncle adjusted the umbrella even though it didn't need adjusting. But nephew, you also have to eat. Having a good heart doesn't fill your stomach. I know, Tariq said, but they're coming back tomorrow. And the day after. Not for money, but as friends. His uncle raised his eyebrows. Friends? With people like that? Why not? Tariq asked. Rich people's kids cry the same as poor people's kids. They just cry in cleaner clothes. His uncle laughed at that, a real belly laugh that made other vendors look over. Wise beyond your years, that's what you are. Too wise, maybe. Don't forget to be a child sometimes, too. But Tariq had forgotten how to be just a child a long time ago. When your family needs you, when survival depends on everyone contributing, childhood becomes something you squeeze into the gaps between responsibilities. The afternoon wore on. Customers came and went. Tariq called out prices, weighed fruit, made change. The spot where he and Amir had made their pattern was already disturbed, pebbles scattered by passing feet. Just like he'd predicted, but it had been real while it lasted. That was what mattered. As the sun began to sink lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Tariq's younger sister Zara appeared at the fruit stand. She was 9 years old with the same serious eyes as Tariq and the same careful way of moving through the world. Mama says come home for dinner, she announced. Tell her I'll be there soon. Uncle and I need to pack up first. Zara didn't leave. She was looking at him with that knowing expression she sometimes got. Something happened today, she said. It wasn't a question. What makes you say that? You have that look. The look you get when you've done something good and you're trying not to be too pleased with yourself. Tariq smiled. His sister knew him too well. Met a kid today. He was having a hard time. I helped him a little. How little? Just sat with him. Made some patterns with rocks, talked. Zara nodded like this made perfect sense. Grandmother's way. Yeah, grandmother's way. His sister reached out and squeezed his hand. Her hands were small but strong, roughened like his from work and life. She'd be happy. That you're passing it on. After Zara left, Tariq and his uncle finished closing up the stand. They covered the fruit with old cloths, locked the cash box, and prepared the cart for the night. Tomorrow they'd come back and do it all again. As they walked home through the darkening streets, Tariq thought about Amir. He wondered if the boy was thinking about their afternoon too. If he was remembering the patterns, the story, the feeling of creating something instead of destroying. He wondered if one afternoon could really make a difference in someone's life. His grandmother had always said that moments of connection were like seeds. You plant them and you don't always get to see what grows, but something always grows. When Tariq reached home, their small house was filled with the smell of lentils and rice. His mother was stirring a pot. His little brother was doing homework by lamplight, and Zara was setting out mismatched plates. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. And tonight, with the memory of helping someone, with the knowledge that he'd made even a small difference in the world, it felt like enough, more than enough. It felt like wealth of a different kind, true to her word. Nadia brought Amir back to the marketplace the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. At first, other vendors watched with curiosity. A wealthy woman and her well-dressed son spending time at a humble fruit stand, sitting in the dust with a poor boy, making patterns with pebbles and drawing with chalk. It was unusual enough to spark gossip. What's she doing here? One shopkeeper whispered to another. Maybe the boy's sick and that poor kid has some kind of healing power. Don't be ridiculous. She's probably just feeling guilty about having so much. But Tariq ignored the whispers. And so did Nadia and Amir. They had found something more valuable than gossip, more important than appearances. Each visit followed a similar rhythm. Nadia would arrive, usually in the late afternoon when the heat was starting to ease. Amir would run to the fruit stand, no longer the screaming child from that first day, but eager and excited. And Tariq, during breaks between customers, would teach him small things. How to breathe slowly when anger started building. How to count to 10 in different languages. How to find smooth stones and arrange them into patterns. How to notice the small, beautiful things that existed even in difficult moments. One day, about a week into their routine, Amir arrived at the fruit stand with tears streaming down his face. Not the explosive tantrum tears from before, but quiet, sad tears that somehow felt more serious. Tariq was helping his uncle stack oranges, but he paused when he saw Amir's face. Nadia looked tired, defeated. She gave Tariq a helpless shrug that said she'd tried everything and nothing had worked. "What happened?" Tariq asked gently, kneeling down to Amir's level. "My friend Fahad said I couldn't come to his birthday party." Amir sobbed. "He said I'm too babyish because I used to cry all the time." Tariq felt a familiar ache in his chest. The ache of being excluded, of being judged for things you were trying to change. He knew that feeling intimately. "That hurts," Tariq said simply, not trying to fix it, not telling him it didn't matter, just acknowledging the pain. "I'm not babyish anymore." Amir insisted, wiping his nose. "I've been practicing. I've been doing the breathing thing when I get upset. I've been making patterns. But Fahad doesn't know that because it just happened last week. So Fahad is judging the old you, not the new you," Tariq said. Amir nodded miserably. Tariq sat down cross-legged on the ground and Amir sat across from him. "Can I tell you something true? Something that might not make you feel better right away, but it's important?" "Okay." People are slow to see changes in us. Even when we work really hard to be different, sometimes others still see us the way we used to be. "That's not fair, but it's real." Amir's face crumpled. "So Fahad will always think I'm a baby?" "Not always. Eventually, if you keep being the new you, people notice. But it takes time. And here's the harder part. The part my grandmother taught me: you have to change for yourself, not for other people. If you're only changing so Fahad will invite you to parties, then you're giving Fahad all your power." Amir looked confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean that being calm, being in control of your feelings, that's a gift you give yourself. Not because it makes other people like you, even though sometimes it does, but because it makes your life better. It makes you feel stronger inside." Tariq picked up 2 stones, one large and one small. "When you live your life based on what other people think, you're like this little stone getting pushed around by everyone else's opinions. But when you live based on who you want to be, you're like this big stone, still affected by things around you but more solid, harder to push over." Amir took the big stone from Tariq's hand and held it tight. "I want to be the big stone. Then keep practicing. Keep breathing. Keep making patterns when you're upset. Not for Fahad, but for Amir." The boy was quiet for a moment, processing. Then he said, "Will you come to my birthday party?" "It's next month. Mama said I could invite you." Tariq glanced at his uncle, who was pretending not to listen, but clearly was. His uncle gave a small nod. "I'd like that," Tariq said. Amir's face brightened considerably. "Really, we're having it at our house. There's going to be a big cake and games and a magic show. Have you ever seen a magic show?" Tariq shook his head. He'd never been to any kind of birthday party, much less one with a magic show, but he didn't say that. Over the following weeks, something interesting began to happen. Other parents in the marketplace who'd been watching Nadia and Amir's visits started approaching Tariq. Quietly at first, almost embarrassed. A woman whose son threw toys when he got frustrated. A father whose daughter screamed in stores. A grandmother raising her grandson who hit other children when he felt overwhelmed. They all wanted to know the secret. How had this poor 12-year-old boy done what they couldn't? How had he helped that rich woman's child when nothing else worked? Tariq didn't think of himself as having secrets. He just shared what his grandmother had taught him. He showed them the breathing exercises, the pattern making, the way of sitting with feelings instead of fighting them. Some parents got it right away. Others struggled, wanting quick fixes, wanting their children to change immediately. But Tariq was patient, just as his grandmother had been patient with him. His uncle noticed the change, too. "You're becoming quite the teacher," he said one evening as they closed up the stand. "Maybe you should charge for your wisdom." But Tariq shook his head. "Grandmother never charged for kindness. Neither will I." "Your grandmother also died poor," his uncle said, but not unkindly. "There's no shame in being paid for valuable work." Tariq thought about that. It was true that money would help his family. But something felt right about keeping this separate from commerce. Like the moment it became a business, it would lose something essential. "Maybe someday," he said, "but not yet." Amir's birthday party arrived on a sunny Saturday. Nadia had sent a car to pick up Tariq, which caused quite a stir in his neighborhood. His mother had fussed over his appearance, making him wear his newest shirt, the one they'd saved for special occasions. The party was in a part of the city Tariq had only seen from a distance. Large houses with gardens and walls. Cars that cost more than his family would earn in 10 years. It was a different world. But Amir greeted him at the door like he was the most important guest, dragging him inside to meet everyone. "This is Tariq," he announced proudly to the other children. "He's my friend who teaches me about feelings." The other kids looked at Tariq with curiosity. His clothes marked him as different, as not belonging to their world. But Amir's enthusiasm was infectious. During the magic show, Tariq sat with Amir and the other children, genuinely amazed by the tricks. The magician pulled scarves from empty hands, made coins disappear, transformed one object into another. "It's all about misdirection," Amir whispered to Tariq knowingly, "making you look one place while the real thing happens somewhere else." Tariq smiled. The boy was learning to pay attention, to notice things. That was good. Later, during cake, Fahad approached them. The same Fahad who'd said Amir couldn't come to his party. "Hi, Amir," Fahad said, slightly awkward. "My mom said I should invite you to my party next week. If you want to come." Amir looked at Tariq, who gave him an encouraging nod. This was Amir's choice to make. "Okay," Amir said. "I'll come." "Thank you." After Fahad walked away, Amir grinned at Tariq. He noticed. "That I'm different now." He noticed, Tariq agreed, "because you kept being the big stone." As the party wound down, Nadia found Tariq on the back porch looking at the garden. She sat beside him, holding a piece of cake on a paper plate. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything. You've changed our lives." Tariq felt uncomfortable with such big words. "I just showed him some things my grandmother showed me. You gave him tools that I, with all my education and resources, couldn't give him. You gave him the ability to understand himself. That's not a small thing, Tariq." She paused, then said, "Other parents have been asking about you, wanting help with their children. There's a school on the other side of the city that works with children who struggle with emotions. They've asked me if I know anyone who might be interested in volunteering there, teaching what you know." Tariq's heart beat faster. "A school, teaching? But I'm just a kid myself, and I need to work at the fruit stand." "You could do both," Nadia said gently. "Just a few hours a week. And the school has a program that provides scholarships to volunteers." "They'd pay for your education, Tariq, all of it." "Through university if you want." Tariq couldn't speak. Education had always seemed like something for other people, something that families like his couldn't afford. "Think about it," Nadia said. "No pressure. But you have a gift, and gifts are meant to be shared." That night, lying on his sleeping mat at home with his siblings breathing softly beside him, Tariq thought about his grandmother, about how she'd taken her pain and turned it into wisdom, how she'd taken her struggles and transformed them into tools for helping others. She'd been poor in money but rich in knowledge. And now maybe Tariq could be both. Maybe he could honor her memory by spreading her teachings further than the fruit stand, further than the marketplace, to children who needed what he had to offer. The next morning, he told his uncle about the school's offer. His uncle listened, then smiled. "Your grandmother always said you'd do something important with your life. I think she knew something we didn't." "But the fruit stand," Tariq protested. "You need my help. We'll manage. Family means helping each other reach for better things, even when it's hard to let go." 3 months later, Tariq started volunteering at the school. He still worked at the fruit stand on weekends, still lived in his small house, still knew the weight of poverty. But now he also knew the weight of purpose. He taught children to make patterns with pebbles when their emotions overwhelmed them. He taught them to breathe through anger. He taught them that creating was stronger than destroying. And each time he taught these lessons, he felt his grandmother's presence, felt her pride, felt the continuation of something that poverty had never been able to touch: love, wisdom, and the simple, profound gift of one human helping another find calm in chaos.